Now, let's understand what is a formula in Excel. In Microsoft Excel, a formula is an expression that operates on values in a range of cells. All formulas in Excel return a result, even when the result is an error. There are different ways to handling errors, which we'll see later. Formulas allow you to perform basic calculations such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. You can also find out percentages and average for a range of cells, manipulate date and time, and lots more. Now let me open an Excel spreadsheet and show you what a formula is. So here I have my Excel worksheet. Now let's say I have some values under this A column, say 20, 30 and 40. Now I want to write a formula that will add the values that are present from cell A1 to cell A3. So I'll give an equal to sign and give my cell range, that is A1 plus A2 plus A3. Now if I hit enter, it will give me the addition of 20 plus 30 plus 40, which is 90. Now let's say I want to divide 40 by 30. If I hit enter, it will give me the division of 40 by 30, which is 1.33. Now let's see what a function is in Excel. When you're working in Excel, you will often hear the terms formula and function used frequently and sometimes interchangeably. They are closely related, but not exactly the same. Technically, a formula is an expression that begins with an equal sign. Functions are used to perform complex calculations that cannot be done manually. Functions have names that reflect their intended use. Now, let me take you back to the Excel sheet and I'll show you what a function is. Suppose now I want to add the values ranging from A1 to A4. Either you can use a formula like we did here. We wrote a formula using multiple addition operator, but there's another way which you can use, that is to write a function. So Excel provides a function called sum that allows you to select a range of cells. So I'll select A1 to A4, I'll close the bracket, and if I hit enter, it will return me the result of 20 plus 30 plus 40 plus 90, which is 180. Similarly, there are other functions. Let's say I want to find the average of a range of cells. So you can use the average function to do that. If I hit tab, it will auto-complete. I'll select the same range of cells from A1 to A4 and close the bracket. If I hit enter, it will return me the average of these selected cells, which is 45. Now that you have understood the basics of formulas and functions in Excel, let's dig deeper into learning the different types of functions available in Excel and use relevant formulas when needed along the journey. On your screens, you can see we have a mathematical functions worksheet where we will learn the different mathematical functions present in Excel. Let's begin at looking at the simple table that has 3 columns, the quantity column, price per unit, and total sales. Now let's find the product of quantity and price per unit to get the total sales value. For that, we will write a formula using the multiplication operator. So here, I'll write the formula, I'll give an equal to sign, I'll select the first quantity, multiplication operator, and then select my price per unit. And if I hit enter, it will give me the product of quantity and price per unit. So 10 into 30 is 300. Now to copy that formula, I will just drag this down. You can see we have all our total sales values. Now, if you want to find the sum of total sales, you can use the sum function. So here, I'll write equal to, then use the sum function. I'll open the bracket, then I'll select my total sales values, close the bracket, and I hit enter. It will give me the total sales or the sum of sales. Similarly, if you want to find the average of total sales, you can use the average function. So I'll type average and hit tab. It will auto-complete. I'll select my sales values, close the bracket. If I hit enter, it will give me the average total sales. Now, there's another function called sum product that is available in Excel. You can use the sum product function to return the sum of the product of corresponding ranges or arrays. So let's find the total sales using the sum product function. The first array, we will have the quantity values, while the second array will have the price per unit. So I'll select my sum product function. My first array, I'll give the quantity values. I'll give a comma, and I'll select my second array, that is price per unit. I'll close the bracket. I hit enter. You can see we have the total sales value, that is 1165. Now, moving ahead, let's understand the types of logical functions in Excel and how you can use it. To the extreme left, you can see there are a number of logical functions I have noted here. So you have is-even function, is-odd function, is-logical, and so on. Now let's use them one by one and see how it works. The is-even function returns true if the given number is an even value, and it returns false if it's not an even number. So we have here two numbers, 4 and 13. Now, if I want to check if 4 is an even number or not, I can use the is-even function. So I'll give equal to sign and type is even, and I'll select this number or the cell, close the bracket. If I hit enter, it will return true because 4 is an even number. Similarly, if I have to check for 13, I'll write is even and select this cell, which is A3, close the bracket. I'll hit enter. It will return false because 13 is not an even number. Similarly, the is-odd function returns true if the given number is odd, and it returns false if it's not an odd number. So let's check if 4 is an odd number or not. So I'll write is odd, hit tab, then I'll select this cell, close the bracket, hit enter. It returns false because 4 is not an odd number. Similarly, let's check for 13. I'll write is odd, select A7, which has 13. I'll hit enter. It returns true because 13 is an odd number. Now, next we have the is-logical function. The is-logical function returns true if the given value is a logical value, and it returns false if it's not a logical value. When I say logical value, I mean true or false. Now let's check if 30 is a logical value or not. So I'll write equal to is logical. I'll select 30. If I hit enter, it returns false because 30 is not a logical number. Similarly, let's check for the next two values. I'll select this cell value which has true in it. If I hit enter, it returns true because true in itself is a logical value. Similarly, false should also return true because it's a logical value. You can see it here. Then we have is-number function that returns true if the given value is a number. Numbers could be integers, floating values, or whole numbers. Now we have a number here which is 40.5. Let's verify if it's a number or not. So I'll write equal to, then select is number, select the cell, close the bracket, hit enter. It returns true. Similarly, if I have to check if 30 is a number or not, you can use the same function, which is number, select 30, close the bracket, hit enter. It returns true because 30 is also a number. Now, in the next cell, we have a text value. You can see it's CNN. So ideally, it should return false because CNN is not a number. There you go. It has returned false because CNN is a text value and not a number. Now, let's explore a few other functions that you can see here. So the round function rounds a number to a specified number of digits. So suppose I want to round up 35.316 to 2 decimal places. So I'll write equal to, then I'll give the round function. I'll provide my number 35.316, comma, since I want to round up to 2 decimal places, I'll give 2. I'll close the bracket. If I hit enter, it gives me the rounded value of 35.316, which is 35.32. Now the round down function rounds a number down towards 0. So let's see. I'll give the round down function and I'll provide the same number, that is 35.316. Let's say I want to round down to 2 decimal places. If I hit enter, the result is 35.31. Similarly, the round-up function rounds a number up away from 0. So I'll write round up. I'll give my number 35.316. If I give the number of digits, say 2, it will return 35.32. So it rounds up this value. Moving ahead. Now if you want to convert a number into integers, you can do that using the int function. So suppose I want to convert 35.316 into integers, I can give my integer function, that is int, and provide my number 35.316. Close the bracket. If I hit enter, so you have the integer value of this floating point number. Similarly, if you want to find the integer of, say, equal to int, let's say a negative number minus 35.316, it will return the negative integer value, that is minus 36. Now the truncate function truncates a number to an integer by removing the decimal or fractional part of a number. So let's say I want to truncate 35.316, I'll write trunc, which is the truncate function. Now let me pass in my number, that is 35.316. Let's say I want to give the number of digits as 2. I close the bracket, hit enter. It returns me 35.31, so it has truncated the last digit. Now similarly, if I give the number of digits as 1, the result will be 35.3. You can see it here. Moving ahead, the ceiling function rounds a number up, that is to the nearest multiple of significance. So I'll show you what it means. I'll use equal to, then pass in my ceiling function. I'll give my number 35.316. If I give, say, 2, close, that returns me 36 because the nearest highest multiple of this number is 36. Similarly, if I give, let's say, 5, it will return 40 because the nearest highest multiple of this number to 5 is 40. Now, talking about the floor function. The floor function rounds a number down to the nearest multiple of significance. So for example, if I use the floor function, the same number 35.316, now let's say I want to give the significance as 2, it will return 34. The nearest lowest multiple of this number, that is divisible by 2, is 34. Now if you want to change this number from 2 to, let's say, we want to give as 7, if I hit enter, it will give 35 because 35 is the nearest multiple of 7. Next, let's talk about an important function called subtotal. Now subtotal returns the subtotal in a list or database, the sub maximum, minimum, sum and others. Let's explore a few of this. Let's say I want to use subtotal function, and let's say I want to find average. You can see here 1 is for average. I'll give 1, comma, I'll give my reference, this quantity column values, close the bracket. If I hit enter, it will give me the average of the selected cells from E2 to E4. Now, let's say I want to find the subtotal, and this time I want to, let's say I want to count, so I'll give 2, comma, I'll count all the values present in the selected cells from E2 to Z4. I'll close the bracket, hit enter. It returns me 9. You can see there are 9 cells that are filled in here. Next, let's say this time I want to find the subtotal, and let's take sum now. So I'll give 9, comma, let's sum up the price per unit column. So F2 to F4, close the bracket, hit enter. You can see the sum of price per unit is 105. Now let's do one more. Use the same subtotal function. Now let's say I want to find the maximum value from the sales column. Select my total sales column. close the bracket, hit enter. It returns me 480 because that's the highest or the maximum value of total sales. Now, Excel provides a factorial function called fact. So if you want to find the factorial of a number, you can use this function. So find out the factorial. So I'll use the fact function. Let's say I want to find the factorial of number 5. I'll close it. You can see the factorial of 5 is 120. Similarly, if you want to find the factorial of, let's say, the number 7, it returns me 1040. Moving on, now you can use the max and min function to find the maximum and minimum values in a range of cells. So I'll use the max function. Let's say I want to find the maximum from price per unit. Then it has returned me the maximum, that is 40. Similarly, you can use the min function. I'll use the same column, price per unit. Now you can see the minimum value from price per unit column is 30. Excel also has a function called rand_between that returns a random number between the numbers you specify. So if you want to generate random numbers, you can use 5 square. The result should be 25. You can see it here. Now I want to find the power of 4 raised to 4. The result is 256. Moving ahead, the modulus function or the mod function returns the remainder when a number is divided by a divisor. So let's see how to use it. I'll use the mod function and give my number 10. Let's divide 10 by 3. The result is 1. Now we have a few other numbers. Let's try them also. Use mod 12. Let's say I want to divide 12 by 4. The result is 0, 9. Similarly, let's see one more. I'll use the count function. Now let's say I'll select from G1 to G4. I close the bracket, hit enter. It returns me 3 because total sales, the first cell value is not a number. It's a character value, hence it's skipped the count of total sales and it counted the remaining cells. Now next, moving on to count A function. The count A function counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. So for example, if I use the count A function, now let's say I'll select from L1 to L4, close the bracket. It has returned me 3 because we had an empty cell, so it skipped that count and it counted the remaining cells that were non-empty. Similarly, let's use the function once more and type count A. Now let's say I'll select from L2 to N4, close the bracket, hit enter. It gives me 5 because we have only 5 values that are cells are empty, so it skipped that count. Moving ahead, we have the count blank function. Now as the function suggests, it counts the number of blank or empty cells in a specified range of. So if I use count blank and let's say I'll select this range from L1 to L4, close the bracket, you can see it has returned 1 because we had one empty cell in this range of cells. Now let's do one more. Count blank. Now I'll select from L2 to N4, close the bracket. It has returned 4 because you can see it here. We have 3 blank cells here, so total 4. Hence it has returned 4. Up next, we have the AND function. The AND function checks if all the conditions or arguments are true. It returns true if all the conditions are true. If one of the conditions is false, then AND function will return false. Let's do this with an example. Suppose I write the AND function. So the first argument or the parameter has to be a logical condition. Let's say I'll select from E2 to E4 and my condition will be greater than 9. Let's say my second condition is from F2 to F4 is less than 45. Close the bracket, hit enter. It returns true because you can see our first condition from E2 to E4, all the values are greater than 9, while the second condition from F2 to F4, all the values are less than 45. So since both the conditions at one of the values is not less than 450, you can see we have a value 480 which is greater than 450, and our second condition F2 to F4, all the values are greater than 25. Now since one of the conditions is false, so our AND function returns false. Moving on to OR function. The OR function checks whether any of the arguments are true and returns true. If all the arguments do not meet the condition, it will return false. So you have to satisfy all the conditions in order to return a true value. I'll use the OR function. Now let's say I'll give my condition from E2 to E4 greater than 15, comma, from F2 to, let's say, F4 less than 25. I close the bracket, I hit enter. It has returned me false because both the arguments are not satisfying the condition. You can see from E2 to E4, none of the values are greater than 15, and similarly from F2 to F4, none of the values are less than 25. Now since both the conditions are false, our OR statement false. Let us take one more example. I'll use the OR function again. Now the condition will be from G2 to G4 greater than equal to 300, comma, let's say from F2 to F4 less than equal to 40. I'll hit enter. There you go. It has returned us true because both the conditions are true. You can see if all the values between G2 to G4 are greater than or equal to 300. Similarly, all the values from F2 to F4 are less than or equal to 40. Now let's get to our second tab, which is character text functions. Here we will learn various character functions and how you can use them in Excel. So first, you can see we have isText function. So the isText function checks if the given value is a text value and returns true or false. So if I were to check if this value is a text or not, so I can use the isText function. I'll give reference to this cell, close the bracket. It returns false because 10 is not a text, it's a number. Similarly, let's check the next one. I'll select cell E3. If I hit enter, you can see it has returned true, though the value is 10, but still it's a text. The reason is, you can see on top, we have given an apostrophe before writing 10. So, I'll show it to you here. In case I write 90, hit enter, the numbers by default are right aligned. Now if I give an apostrophe and then write 90, hit enter, it is now a text. You can check that using the isText function. Select the cell, close the bracket, hit enter, it returns me true. So this 90 is a text value. Now similarly, let's check for the next one, is equal to isText. I'll select this cell, hit enter, it returns me true because Excel is a text value. Now the next function we have is the length function. As the name suggests, the length function returns the number of characters in a string. So it will count the total characters including spaces as well as special characters. So let's see how many characters does this string India has. If I hit enter, it returns 5. You can count India has in total 5 characters. Similarly, let's check for this sentence. I'll write len, which is the length function. Select this cell, close the bracket, hit enter. It returns me 28 because it has counted the spaces also. Now, there's a function called text that converts a value to text in a specified number format. So suppose I want to convert these date values into text values in a given number format. So I can write the text function. I can give the value by referencing this cell, comma. Let's say I want to print the date value in the form of a text in this formats. Let's say DD, MM and YY. Close the bracket. You can see this has converted the date value into DD, MM, YY. Now similarly you can change the date value to text in some other format like DD, M, then 4Y. You can see it returns 30 June 2015. Now, if this is a text value or not, you can use the same function, that is isText. I'll give reference to this cell. There you go. It has returned me true, which means it has converted the date values into text now. Moving ahead, next we have the replace function. The replace function replaces the part of a text string within a different text string. So suppose I want to replace cell 15 value, which is A101. I'll give my start num as 1. The number of characters, let's say 1. And my new text, I want to replace the A value with B. Close the bracket. If I hit enter, you can see here A101 has become B101 because we replaced the first A value to B. Now, let's try out a few more examples. I'll use the replace function. I'll give my old text that is A102. I'll give my start num as 1. My number of characters as 1. Let's say the new text I want is A2. Close the bracket. You can see it here. From our old text which had A, it has replaced with new text that has A2. Now let's say I want to use the replace function over Adam. I'll select this cell A17. Now let's say the start num is 1. The number of characters is, let's say, 2. And I want my new character as SA. Close the bracket. You can see it here. The first two characters from Adam has been replaced by SA. That is what we did here. So we started our start num with 1. Then we chose the next two characters, that is AD. And AD we replaced it with SA. So the name becomes Sam now. Moving ahead, the next function we have is substitute. The substitute function replaces existing text with new text in a text string. For example, if I use the substitute function, I'll give my old text, which has I work at Simplilearn, give a comma. Now I'll select, let's say, I work, which is from my old text, and I want to replace it with he works. Close the bracket. You can see the substitute function has replaced the second 2010 from our old string to 2016. Next, let's use the substitute function once again. I'll give the cell reference as A22. This time I want to replace 2010 present in the old text to 2016. You can see here at two places there were 2010. It has replaced it to 2016 at both the places. Then we have the concatenate function. You can see it here. Concatenate means combining strings. So a concatenate function joins or merges several text strings into one text string. Here I have two strings, hello, and in another cell I have world. I want to concatenate these two strings. So I'll use the concatenate function. I'll select cell A25, give a comma. Now I'll give two inverted commas with a space, give another comma and select cell B25 that has world. Close the bracket. There you go. Now it has concatenated both hello and world. Now it's one word, hello world. Similarly, let's concatenate these two cells. I'll use the concatenate function and select my first cell that has XLS. Now you can use an ampersand to concatenate as well, and then give two inverted commas for space, give another ampersand and select the next cell. Close the bracket, hit enter. You can see it has concatenated the two cells and it has formed a sentence, Excel is fun to learn. Up next, we have the repeat function. Now repeat function or REPT function repeats text a given number of times. You can fill a cell with a number of instances of a text string. Now we have some data here. So here, let's say these are the age groups of women and there was a survey. These are the number of respondents we got from each age group. I want to create an histogram. I can use the repeat function or REPT function. I want to give my text as a special character, hit a comma, and I'll select cell B32, which is the number of times I want to repeat that character. Hit enter. You can see it has repeated the special character 10 times. Now similarly, you can do it for the next few cells also. If I just copy paste this formula, it will give me the result. So you can see it looks like a histogram. Now let's say I want to repeat hashtag and @ symbol for 10 times. So I can write the repeat function, give my text as hashtag and @ and the number of times I want is 10. Close the bracket. It returns me the result which has hashtag and @ printed 10 times. Moving ahead, next we have the type function. Now the type function returns an integer representing the data type of a value. Now here on the right you can see, suppose the type function returns 1, it means the value is a number or it's a blank. Let's say the return type is 2, it means the data type is a text. If it's 4, it means the data type is a logical value, that is either true or false. Now if it's an error, it will return the value 16, and if it's an array, it will return 64. Now let's try these examples. Here we have Excel, which is a text value. So if I use my type function and select Excel, hit enter, it returns me true because Excel is a text value. You can see it here. If it's a text, it will return 2. Now similarly, let's try this one. 100, it has returned me 1 because 1 is a number, so it will return me 1. 15.45, if I use the type function, 15.45, hit enter, so it has returned me 1. Now you can see these are some errors. Now it's an error because we have divided A39 by A40. You can see it here. A39 had a text value and A40 had a numeric value, so you cannot obviously divide a text by a number. So it has returned me an error. Now if I want to check the type, close the bracket, hit enter, it has returned me 16. You can see it here. If it's an error value, it will return 16. Similarly, there's one more error here. Let's try this out. Use the type function, give this error, hit enter. This also has returned 16. Now let's check one more example for an array. Now you can write an array inside the type function itself. To write an array, we use curly braces. I'll give 1, 2, 3 and 4 as my array elements. I close the curly braces and the bracket. If I hit enter, it has returned me 64. You can see it here. If it's an array, it will return the data type as 64, which is an array. Now, there's a function called isBlank, which checks if a cell is empty or blank. If it is empty, it will return true, else it will return false. Now, if you were to check if this cell is empty or not, if I hit enter, it returns me true because you can see it here. Cell A47 is empty and there's no value in it. Now, if I want to find out if cell A48 is blank or not, if I hit enter, it returns me false because there is a value 40 in it. Now, we'll see how to use trim function. So the trim function removes all the unnecessary spaces from a string, but it won't remove all the unnecessary spaces except the space between Angela and Stephens. Now I'll copy paste this value to the remaining cells. You can see it has removed all the unnecessary spaces from the original string. Now you can check the length once again. For the trimmed string, if I hit enter, the length is 15 for Stephens. You can see it has removed at least 6 spaces from the original string. Now let's copy paste this formula. It has removed the unnecessary spaces from all the original strings. Next, we have the find function. So the find function returns the starting position of one string within another string. Now you should notice that find function is case sensitive. So let's use the find function here. I'll write find. I want to find where capital S is located in the cell A52 that has Angela Stephens. You give a comma, select A52, hit enter. It returns me the starting position, that is 11. Now, if I were to check using the find function, this time I want to find where small e is located within A52, which has Angela Stephens. I'll give a comma and I want my start num as 1. Close the bracket, hit enter. It has returned me 7. You can count it here on the top. So where the cursor is the first position. So I'll now keep shifting 2, 3, 4, 5. Cell A52 that has Angela Stephens. Close the bracket, hit enter. It has returned me 11. So basically it has returned me this S, but since search function is case insensitive, so it did not care if it was an uppercase s or a lowercase s. Similarly, if I want to find where A is located or capital A is located in Antonio Maino, I'll use the search function. I want to find capital A. Within text, I'll give cell A54. Now let's say I want to give my starting num as 5, close the bracket. It has returned me 19, so it has returned me this A, because the only A that exists after 5 is this. So here also, since we searched for capital A, but it looked for any A that was present in Antonio Minor, be it small or capital. Finally, we have a clean function. So the clean function returns all non-printable characters from the text. Now you can see here this cell has 3 lines of text. Now if you want to print this cell in one line, I can use the clean function. It will remove all the non-printable characters. I'll select cell A67, close the bracket, hit enter. There you go. It has printed the address in one line. Now we have one more text which says, I hope you are doing well during the pandemic. Now if I want to clean that cell, close the bracket, it has printed the same sentence in one line. Now there are a few more functions. Let's see them one by one. We have a function called upper. So the upper function converts any text string into uppercase. So we have a string called India. Now if I want to convert India into uppercase, I'll use the upper function. Select that cell. You can see it here. It has converted India into uppercase characters. Similarly, you can use the lower function to convert any text string into lowercase. I'll use the lower function. Select that string, enter. There you go. So all the letters in the word India has been converted into lowercase. Now there's another function called proper, which is used to convert any string into proper case. So I can write a VLOOKUP function something like this. I'll give equal to, search for VLOOKUP. Now my lookup value will be Stuart, give comma. Then I'll select my table array. So I'll take my table array from A2 to C7. If you want, you can choose the entire table also. Give a comma. My column index number is this department column, which is the third column. And range lookup is either true or false. I'll select false, which is 0 for exact match. If I hit enter, you can see it has returned marketing. And in the table also, if you see, Stuart is from the marketing department. So this is a simple example how you can use VLOOKUP. Now, if you want, you can choose the entire table. So I can select from A2 to E7, hit enter, it will give the same result. Now, suppose I want to find from the marketing department. So this is the person who is from the marketing department. I want to find the city. I'll use the VLOOKUP function again, VLOOKUP. Now my lookup value is marketing, and column is the leftmost lookup column. Select the remaining table, give a comma. Now my column index number is 2, is the city column. And I'll give my range lookup as 0 because I want the exact match. I'll hit enter. You can see it has returned me the city to which this person from the marketing department belongs to, that is Kansas. Let's see another example. Suppose I want to find the city to which the person with the last name Davis belongs to. So I'll write my VLOOKUP function. I'll take my lookup value as Davis. I'll give a comma. Now my table array will start from the last name column. And let's select the remaining columns as well. Now my column index number will be 3 as per our selection. For example, let's say we want to find the first name of the person who is from Los Angeles city. So we have our lookup value is Los Angeles, and now we want to find the first name. So I'll again use the lookup function. I'll give my lookup value is Los Angeles, comma. Now my lookup vector is the city column, comma. My resultant vector is the first name column. Close the bracket, hit enter. You can see it has returned me Stuart, which is actually wrong. If you see our original table, the person who is from Los Angeles city is not Stuart, but it's Lucy. So the mistake that we did was, before applying the formula, we did not sort a lookup column. So let me sort this column in ascending order. Go to the data tab, I'll sort it, I'll click sort. Now you can see it has returned me Lucy. and you can see there was an error because we sorted the table, so the values changed. So be aware of this. Now let's try another example. Let's say I want to find the department of the person who was hired on this particular date, which is 10th of November 2001. So I can use the lookup function here. Better, first I'll sort this date hired column in ascending order. Click on sort. Now let's find the department of the person with the last name as Davis. So you can see Davis, and the department it belongs to is sales. So I'll use the HLOOKUP function again. Select my lookup value as Davis, give a comma. Now my table array, I'll select from G2 to M5. Now in this selection, my row index number will be 2, which is the department column. Give a 0, close the bracket, hit enter. It has returned sales. So Davis is from sales department. Moving ahead, now let's explore the if function. So the if function in Excel checks whether a condition is satisfied or met. It returns a value if true, else it will return another value if the condition is not satisfied. So let me use an if function here. I'll give my logical test as, say the value in cell O11, if it's greater than 5, then I'll return yes, 10 is greater, else I'll return no. Close the bracket, hit enter. You can see the result. It says yes, 10 is greater because our condition 10 is greater than 5. Now if I change this value to 4, it returns no because 4 is not greater than 5. Now we have a question here. I want to add values to this result column. So our condition is, if the player scores more than 50 and average is more than 42, then he's a good player, else he's not a good player. So we'll return not so good. So we have 3 player names, the runs they have scored, and the average they have. So I'll use the and give my condition. I'll write equal to if. Now since I am checking for 2 conditions, that is the player should score more than 50 and the average should be more than 42. So I'll use and clause here. So I'll check if P22, which has the runs, is greater than 50 and Q22 is greater than 42, then we'll return he's a good player, else not so good. Close the bracket. Now if I hit enter, it has returned me good player because both runs and averages they meet our condition. Now let me copy paste this formula. For this cell you can see Michael has scored 40 runs and his average is also 40. He's not so good because our condition was he should have scored more than 50 and average should be more than 42. So both the conditions was not met. The next function we have is if NA. Now the if NA function will return the value you specify if the expression resolves to any value, otherwise it will return the result of the expression. So I want to find the department of Anthony. Now you can see the first name column, there's no name as Anthony. Let's see what happens if you want to find the department of Anthony. So I'll write equal to if NA. Now in value I'll use a VLOOKUP function. I'll give my value as R12, which is Anthony, and I'll choose my column as from O2 to S7. Give a comma. Now the department or the column index number is 3, which is the department column. I'll give 0. Close the bracket. Give another comma. Now if the value results in NA, we'll return such as value not found. Hit enter. You can see it here. It has returned me value not found because our VLOOKUP function could not find any lookup value as Anthony in the first name column. So it returned value not found. Similarly, there's one more function called if returned value not found. Similarly, there's one more function called if error. So the if error function returns the error value if the expression is an error. Otherwise, it returns the value of the expression if there is no error. So, these two cells, you can see we have some values 10 and 0. Let's say I want to use the error function, and the value I'll give is, say I want to divide U3 by U4. So I'm dividing 10 by 0. Now, if the result is an error, we'll return cannot divide. Close the bracket, hit enter. You can see it has returned me cannot divide because you cannot divide a number by 0. Hence there was an error, so it returned this value. Now, let's say I want to divide, let's say I want to use the if error function again. And now I want to divide W3, which has the value 10, by W4, which has the value 5. I'll give the value if error, that is cannot divide. If I hit enter, it returns me true because 10 is divisible by 5. So it divided 10 by 5 and the result was 2. Similarly, let's say I want to find the city to which, again, there is no Anthony. Let's try this out. I'll use the index function. Now the array I will give is from Z2 to AC7, comma, my row num is 3 and the column number I want is 2. Close. It returns me Davis, which is this one. The reason being we skipped the header column. Our column was selected from this cell. So this is our first row, second row, third row. So third row and second column we have Davis. Similarly, let's check for fifth row and fourth column. I'll use the index function. I'll give my array from Z2 to AD7 this time. I'm selecting the entire table. I'll give my row number as 5 and my column as 4. Close the bracket. Hit enter. The result it returns is Boston. You can see the fifth row is this one and the fourth column is city. So it returned us Boston. Now the match function returns the relative position of an item in an array that matches a specified value. So if you want to find the position at which events is located in the table, so you can use the match function something like this. Match, I'll take my lookup value as Y15, which has events, comma. Now my lookup array will be the last name column because events was from the last name column, comma. I'll give 0 for exact match. I'll hit enter. It gives me 5. Events was present in the fifth row. Let's check for Boston now. I'll use the match function again. My lookup value will be Boston, comma. My lookup array will be the city column, comma. I want the exact match. Close the bracket, hit enter. It returns 6. So if you start from the beginning here, this is the first row, second, third, fourth, fifth and sixth. In sixth row we have Boston. Now you can use this index match function to return a value in a column to the left. With VLOOKUP, you are stuck returning a value from a column. I'll select my lookup array from Z1 to Z7, comma, 0. I close the brackets, hit enter. It has returned Kansas. You can see Jensen, the first name Jensen, belonged to city Kansas. Similarly, let's find the city to which the person with the last name as Evans belongs to. So Evans, you can see from the table, belongs to Los Angeles. Let's find out using our index match function. I'll write index and then array I'll give as AC1 to AC7, comma. My row num, I'll give my match function. Lookup value will be events, which is AB15, comma. Lookup array is AA1 to AA7, which is our last name column, and 0. If I hit enter, you can see it has returned Los Angeles. Now let's find out the department to which Zampa belongs to. So I'll use my index function. Now I'll select my array from AA1 to AC7, comma. I'll find the row number using the match function. So my lookup value will be Zampa, which is AB18, comma. the lookup array will be AA1 to AA7, comma 0. I close the bracket, give one more comma. Now I'll find the column number. I'll again use my match function to do it. So this time I want to find the location of department. So I'll give department, that is AB1, as the reference, comma, the lookup array will be from AA1 to AD1, which are the column headers, comma 0, and I'll close the brackets. If I hit enter, it gives me sales. So you can see here from the table, Zampa is from the sales department. So in this way you can use index match function to find the row number, the column number, and the value you are looking for. Now we'll talk about COUNTIF, COUNTIFs, SUMIFs, and AVERAGEIF functions. So you can see I am here in a new tab. Now to check these functions, I'm using a coronavirus dataset. You can see it here. It has a date column. Then we have divided the date into day, month, year, number of cases, deaths, countries from which these cases and deaths came from. We have the continent and few other information. So first let's see what COUNTIF function does. So the COUNTIF function counts the number of cells within a range that meet the given condition. So we'll see these functions by taking an example. So we have a question here. We want to count the number of times Afghanistan is present in the dataset. So I'll consider my G column, that is countries and territories. So I'll write my COUNTIF function. I'll give my range from G1 to the end of this G column. I'll give a comma, go to the top. Now my criteria will be Afghanistan. If you want, you can use cell reference as well. I'm typing the country name manually. If I hit enter, it gives me 146. So in this column, that is the G column, Afghanistan is present 146 times. Similarly, let's count the number of times India is present in the dataset. So I'll use the COUNTIF function again. I'll select the same range. I'll give a comma. Now my criteria will be India. You can see here India is present 155 times. Moving on, the next function we'll talk about is COUNTIFs. So COUNTIFs function counts the number of cells specified in a given set of conditions or criteria. So our question is, count the total number of days in which the cases in India have been greater than 100. So to do this, COUNTIFs function, I'll select my criteria range. First I'll select the G column, comma. My first criteria is we want to check for India. And then my second condition is that the number of cases has to be greater than 100. So my next criteria range will be the cases column, comma, and my condition is greater than 100. Close the bracket, hit enter. The result is 68. So a total of 68 days India had more than 100 cases. The next example is we need to count the number of days in which the deaths in United States have been greater than 200. So for that, I'll use the COUNTIFs function. I'll give my criteria. So this time I am taking my first criteria as the cases, comma. So the cases have to be greater than 200. Close the bracket, hit enter. So you can see the total cases in India till 3rd of June have been more than 2 lakhs. Now I want to find the total deaths in the United States till the 3rd of June. I'll use the same SUMIF function. Now my first criteria will be the G column, comma. I'll give my second value as United States of America. I'll use the same format using underscore. States of America, comma. Now the second range will be the deaths column. Close the bracket, hit enter. You can see the total deaths in the United States till 3rd of June have crossed 1 lakh. Similarly, let's now see our SUMIFs function. So the SUMIFs function adds the cells specified in a given set of conditions or criteria. So we have a question here. We want to find the total cases in France on those days where the deaths have been less than 100. So this should be those days instead of whose. Okay, so let's see our sumifs function. Now, first we need to give the sum range. Since we want to find the total cases, so we'll give the sum range as the column E, comma. Now, the second criteria is the countries column. So I'll give the G column, and we want to check for France. Give that criteria, comma. The second criteria is I need to find only for those days where the deaths have been less than 100. So I'll give the deaths column, comma. The criteria should be less than 100. Close the bracket, hit enter. This is the result. So the total cases in France on those days where the deaths have been less than 100 is 20,638. Now, let's talk about the average if function. So the average if function finds the average or the arithmetic mean of the cells specified by a given condition or criteria. So our question is, we want to find the total average daily cases in India. This is till the 3rd of June. So I'll use the average if function. And my first criteria I'll select is the countries column. And my criteria will be India. And then I'll give the range, that is the E column, which has the cases. If I hit enter, so these are the daily average cases in India till the 3rd of June. Next, let's talk about some date and time functions in Excel. You can see here I am in my date and time sheet. So let's start with the today function. The today function returns the current date or today's date. So if I write equal to today, close the bracket, hit enter, it will return me today's date, which is 28th of July. Now you can use the now function, which will return the current date and time value. So if I write equal to now, if I hit enter, you can see it has returned the current date and the time. So this is basically the system date and time. You can see it here. Now there's another function called time. The time function converts hours, minutes, seconds given as numbers to an Excel serial number formatted with a time format. So you can see here, I'll write the time function. Now let's say I'll give my hours as 20. So it's in 24 hours format. Let's say minute I'll give 40 and seconds I'll give 20. I close the bracket, hit enter. The time is 8:40 p.m. Now you can subtract the now function from today function to return the time value. So let me show it to you here. I'll write my now function and I'll subtract today. If I hit enter, it returns me the time. This is the system time. Now there's another function in Excel called dateDiff function, which returns the difference between two dates in terms of years, months and days. Now here I have a date of birth, which is 30 December 1994, and we have today's date. I have used the today function. If I want to find the age, I can use the dateDiff function. So I'll write dateDiff, and in that I'll give my first date value as the date of birth, which is 30 December 1994, comma, my second date value will be today's date, which is 28th of July. Now I want to find the age in terms of years, so within double quotes I'll give Y. I hit enter, it gives me 25. So it has subtracted our first date value and the second date value to return the year. Now the dateDiff function will always return a whole number. You can see it here, this was a whole number. You can use the yearFrac function in Excel to return the year fraction representing the number of whole days between the start date and the end date. So I can use the yearFrac function here. Right, yearFrac. My start date will be my date of birth. Now the end date will be today's day, comma, basis. I'll give 1, which is actually, it will divide the actual number of days by the actual days in a year. Right, enter. It gives me my year fraction, which is 25.5763. Now let's say I'll replace 1 with, let's say 2. If I hit enter, it gives me 25.95. You can see it here. If you give 2, it will divide the actual days by 360. Now the default value is 0. Moving ahead, we have the weekday function. Now the weekday function returns a number from 1 to 7, identifying the day of the week of a date. So let me use the weekday function. I'll give my serial number as today. If I hit enter, it gives me 3. Now let's say I want to use the weekday function again. I'll use my cell reference E2, which has the today's date, comma. Now the return type I'll give as 2, which means it starts from Monday through Sunday. So the first day of the week starts on a Monday and ends on a Sunday. If I give 2, close the bracket, hit enter, it gives me 2. It's the second day of the week. Then we can have your day function, month function, and year function. Let's explore them one by one. So the day function returns the day of the month. It will have a number between 1 to 31. So 1 means the beginning of the month and 31 means the last day of the month. So if I use my day function on E2, which is today's date, if I hit enter, it gives me 28, that is 28th of July. Similarly, let's check for month. I'll give the same cell reference, hit enter. It gives me 7, which means the July month. Now let's find the year, give the cell reference, hit enter. It returns me the year, that is 2020. Now you can extract the hours, minutes and seconds from a time value. So I'll use the hour function to get the hour value from the current time. You can see it has returned 14, which means it's 2 p.m. Now let's find out the minute also. I'll use the minute function, give my now function, hit enter, gives me 19. So it's 2 p.m. and 19 minutes. Now let's find out the seconds also. I'll give my now function to get the second also. There's another function in Excel called days 360. So days 360 function returns the number of days between two dates based on a 360-day year. So we assume that in a year all the months have 30 days. So I'll use my days 360 function. I'll give my start date as my date of birth, which is B12, comma, the end date I'll give today's date, which is in B13, and the method I'll use is true, which is European method. You can see what the European method says. Says the start dates and end dates that occur on the 31st day of a month will be equal to the 30th day of that month. Close the bracket, hit enter. It gives me the total number of days that were between my first date, that is the starting date, and the end date. Similarly, now let's use days 360 once again. I'll give my start date, let's say 25th of June 2020, and my end date will be today's date. So get the total number of days, that is 33. Similarly, we have EO month, which means end of month. So end of month function returns the serial number of the last day of the month before or after a specified number of months. So I'll use my EO month. I'll give my start date as B12, which is my date of birth. And then I want the number of months to be 10. Hit enter. You can see it has given us the next day when the month is ending. So it is 31st of October 1995. Coming to weeknum function. The weeknum function returns the week number of the year. So I'll use my weeknum function and my serial number will be today's date, comma. The return type I want is 2. So I want my week to begin on a Monday. So I'll give 2, close the bracket, hit enter. It gives me 31. So today's date, that is 28th of July, is the 31st week of the year. Let's explore a few more functions. We have network days and work days. Now these are advanced functions of date and time in Excel. Now the network days function returns the number of whole working days between two dates. So network days automatically excludes weekends, that is Saturday and Sunday, and can optionally exclude a list of holidays supplied as dates. Now I have listed down the list of holidays. This is from the US calendar, and the list of holidays are for the current year, that is 2020. So first, let's use our network days function to find the number of working days between two date values. So I'll write network days, and let's say I'll give my first date or the starting date as 1st of July 2020, and I'll give my second date value as 31st of July 2020. Close the bracket, hit enter. It gives me 23. Now let me show you the calendar. Now this is the July calendar. If you can see, the first day of July starts on Wednesday and it ends on Friday, and in between we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So total we have 8 weekends. So our net's skipped counting these weekends. So since July is a 31 days month, it has subtracted those 8 days. Those were on weekends. So 31 minus 8 is 23. So in total we have 23 working days in July. Now let's say I want to include the holiday calendar also. So I'll use the network days function again. I'll give my starting. The workday function returns serial number of the date before or after a specified number of workdays. The Excel workday function takes date and returns the nearest working day in the future or past. It can be used in logistics to calculate shipping dates, delivery dates that need to take into account working and non-working days. It automatically excludes weekends, that is Saturdays and Sundays. So let me use my workday function. I'll give my start date as 1st of July 2020, and the number of days I'll give is 5. Close the bracket, hit enter. It has returned me a serial number. You can convert this into a date value. So our next working date after 1st of July is 8th of July. If you see the calendar, we started on 1st of July. So counting 5 days after 1st of July. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So the next working day after 5 days will be 8th of July. So it has skipped counting the weekends 4th of July and 5th of July. Similarly, I'll use the workday function again. This time I'll give my starting date as 1st of July only. And now I want to find the next working days after 5 days, and I'll give my holiday list. Close the bracket, hit enter. I can convert this into a date value. You can see it has given us 9th of July because 5 days we had a holiday, that is 3rd of July, which was an Independence Day. Finally, let's move on to our next and the final section in this tutorial for functions and formulas. We have some financial functions. So these financial functions are commonly used in banking and financial sectors. Let's have a look at them one by one. First, we have the PMT function. Now the Excel PMT function is a financial function that returns the periodic payment for a loan. The PMT function can be used to figure out the future payments for a loan, assuming constant payments and a constant interest rate. So I'll just show you the arguments the PMT function takes. You can see it takes rate, NPR or NPER, PV, FP and a type. So rate is the interest rate for the loan. NPER is the total number of payments for the loan. PV is the future value or the total value of all loan payments now. FV is the future value or a cash balance you want after the last payment is made. By default it is 0. Type, it is optional when payments are due. So 0 means end of period, 1 means beginning of period. Now let's use the PMT function to find the future payments for a loan. So I have my data here on the top. I have my rate as 5%. I'll use cell reference A2, comma. Then I want my NPER or number of period. So I'll give my cell B2, comma. The present value is my loan amount, that is 2 lakhs, comma. I don't want any future value, I'd give it as 0. Close the bracket, hit enter. You can see it has returned us the PMT amount or the principal amount. Now you can see it has given us a negative number. The reason being the amount is getting deducted from our present value. So to solve this issue, you can give a negative sign here. So if I copy paste the formula again, let me put it in this cell, equal to, I'll paste it. Now if I give a negative sign, now I can edit this. Instead of 4, I'll give 12 because we want to find it monthly. So we'll convert our annual interest rate to monthly interest rate now. And I'll multiply the NPR or the number of periods into 12 and I'll hit enter. So this is our future value or the PMT monthly. Moving on, now we have a table here. You can see there have been a series of cash flow over a period of time. Now using this table, I want to use my IRR and XIRR function. So the IRR function in Excel returns the internal rate of a series of cash flows. So if I want to find the internal rate of return, I'll use the IRR function and I'll select my values from B16 to B21, close the bracket. So this is my IRR value, that is 22%. If I want to find the XIRR value, I'll use the XIRR function that returns the internal rate for a schedule of cash flows that occur in irregular intervals. Now, for using the XIRR function, I'll use this table. Now you can see it has irregular cash flows over a period of time. So let me use my XIRR function. I'll give my values ranging from F22 to F27, comma, the dates I'll give from E22 to E27. Close the bracket, hit enter. This is my XIRR value. Up next, we'll see how to find out the future value. So for using the future value, we use the FV function in Excel that returns the future value of an investment. You can use the FV function to get the future value of an investment assuming periodic constant payments with a constant interest rate also. So this is my table. So we have an annual interest rate of 10%, years we have 8, and yearly payment we have 1 lakh. Now to find the future value, I'll use equal to FV rate, I'll give G4, which is 10%, comma, NPER, I'll give G5, which is the number of years, that is 8, and yearly payment, I'll give 1 lakh, which is G6, comma, present value 0, type is also 0, right, enter. So this is my future value, which is 11 lakhs 43,588. Similarly, if you want to find the present value, so you can use the PV function, which returns the present value of an investment, that is the total amount that a series of future payments is worth now. So let me use the PV function. I'll give my rate as 8%, which is G13, comma, my number of periods is 5, or you can assume 5 years, comma, my PMT or payment per period is 10,000, comma, future value is 0, type is also 0. So this is my present value. Up next, we have the net present value or the NPV function. So the NPV formula or the function calculates the net present value of an investment based on a discount rate and a series of future payments having negative values and income having positive values. So you can see in the table here, our investment has a negative value and our incomes have positive values, and we have a discount rate of 10%. Now let's find the net present value. We use the NPV function. Now the rate I'll give is 10%, comma, rule